learning versus studying. And this is something that I've begun to start talking a lot more about because the more people I work with, the more I realize we all talk about studying, but we don't really talk about learning. And the majority of us were not really taught how to study, and thus we don't learn very well. And so that is the biggest reason why this company is now focused so much on learning rather than studying, because it's important that we are learning for our own learning styles. If you haven't already figured out what your learning style is, please go onto the website. There's a free quiz you can take, and it will give you an idea of what your learning style is. I'm also revamping that with the amount of people I'm working with. I'm realizing that there's more than just three learning styles. I might be making these up, I don't know. But I'm going to be revamping that quiz at some point because I think there's closer to more like 8 or 9 learning styles than there are three. And I need to do research and things like that to really dive in to see if other people think the same thing, but those are my thoughts. So first, the reason why we don't remember things very well is because of something called the forgetfulness curve. And the first day that you learn something, you'll see here on this slide, the forgetfulness curve is very, very steep. You're only going to remember it for maybe a day. Depending on how it was administered and what was taught to you, sometimes it will stick. But it only sticks if it is directly in your own learning style and curtailed to you. And so it's really important that we're doing spaced repetition, which means that we're reviewing things over a period of time. And if you have done any syllabus creation with me, you know I'm a huge advocate for this. And I say every 5 weeks, we do a practice of review, and we review all the way back to week 1. Because a lot of times when we put our syllabuses together, we're putting together maybe a 20-week syllabus, a 30-week syllabus, and then by week 15, we talk about stuff that we learned on week 1, and you're like, oh, that's gone. I don't even remember it. And so it's really important to make sure that when we're reviewing all the way back to week 1 to help with that spaced repetition, to help create better long-term retention. So here is an example of a syllabus. This is obviously a very blank syllabus, but the point is that every 5th week, we always go back to week 1. Now, I know some of you have an exam coming up very quickly, so you will use this more for when you are creating your syllabus for your next exam. But this is crucially important. And then especially for those of you who are sitting quite soon, it is really important that the last few weeks before your exam, you are reviewing all the way back to week 1 for if you can do 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. That is ideal rather than trying to put new information into your brain right before the exam. The second way that I like to make sure that we are doing spaced repetition is in a process which is the first step of the next step for me, which is the retrieval practice. And this is what I like to do every single day that I am studying, is I like to do today's recall. Now, this is a page out of our concentration companion planner, but you can just do this on a regular piece of paper. And every single time you finish a study session, you have a blank piece of paper and you write down all the most important things that you can remember down on that recall. You have this short and succinct and brief as if you were teaching it to someone and telling someone who didn't know much about it that this is the most important aspects of what I just studied. I like to have these all in one place. That's why I put them all into the Concentration Companion Planner. If you haven't seen it, this is what it looks like. It's actually, the cover looks a little different now. I've revamped what the covers look like for all of our products, but everything is all in one place. So when you go and you thumb through it, you can see all of the recalls for the entire time you've been doing this. And then before you start the next study session, so let's say tomorrow's study session, you go back and you read through very quickly, you can skim through them, the previous recalls that you've done. That helps just trigger your brain to get back into the place that you were when you were previously studying, and allows your brain to more easily retrieve the information that you're putting into it. So number 2 is retrieval practices. Another way that I really enjoy doing this is in a way that gets you out of your house, out of your office, out of your typical environment where you are used to being in when you are studying. When we take exams, we are completely out of our element. So I like trying to get my clients or my students out of their element as much as possible. And in my opinion, the most fun way to do this is to just go down to your local wine shop, a wine shop that's got a pretty vast selection of wines from all around the world, and just start strolling down each aisle. And as you feel so inclined, stop, look at a bottle, say that bottle is a bottle of Argentinian Malbec from Mendoza. You sit there and you just, in your head, right there, quiz yourself. Tell me everything you could possibly tell me about this bottle. Don't have to worry about producer at this moment. What is Malbec? Where is Argentina? Where is Mendoza? What are the subregions? What are the important GIs? Where are the important locations? Why is Tupungato so prevalent, and why are the wines made so well here? Where did these vines start to come from? What's the history of Malbec in Argentina? Where did Malbec come from? What is Malbec known as in Cahors or in France? And you really just start going down that rabbit hole. I like to have a notebook with me when I do this, because anytime you think of something, you're like, oh, what is that? What is that? You write it down. And as soon as you get home, don't do it until you get home or you're on the train ride back home, or, you know, on the taxi or the Uber or whatever. Then you can go and look up the answers to the things that you couldn't remember. But the more you can do this, the more you can force your brain to retrieve the information from within in a setting that is not the same as what you're typically used to, is ideal. And for those of you who work in a place that is a wine shop, this is ideal. You can just step away from your computer and go and walk down the aisles and start to quiz yourself. If you don't have a wine shop near you, you could easily do this with a wine list. You can either Google some of the most important wine lists or the most credentialed wine lists in America. I liked to do this, especially when I was trying to build my producer background knowledge, is Google 11 Madison Park, Google French Laundry, Google Canlis, Google some of these top restaurants throughout the US, or you can go outside of the US as well and look at their wine lists. Look and see what producers they have on there. Look and see which ones are common throughout. Because if you're in a place like Vegas, for instance, where we have a very limited selection of wines that come to us, we have more than some places for sure, but we don't get some of the wines that San Francisco or Miami or Chicago or New York or any of those get, because some people just don't like to be in Vegas. This gave me an ability to see a lot of other producers that were commonly around the world. And then from there, you were able to sit there. And so here you see there's a Cabernet Franc from Domaine de Chantelousier, which, if you know this producer, they're from Chinon. So we talk about Chinon. Okay, this is Cab Franc, a lot of carbonic on this wine, so on and so forth. And you can sit there and quiz yourself throughout looking at all of these things. And the more you can practice this retrieval practice, the better. And we're going to talk about ways that you can do this with practice exam and stuff like that down the road. But this is a way for you to do it by yourself at any time of the day, anywhere you would like to be, to keep that retrieval practice at top of mind, because our brain needs practice to retrieve the information from within. There are some things that you can remember from when you were like 5 years old, middle school, high school. How many times have you heard a song that you haven't heard since like 2000 and you still know all the words? So your brain has the information in there. It just needs a prompt to bring that information out. And for me, and for a lot of my clients, a wine shop or a wine list can do that for you. So the whole purpose of retrieval practices is to strengthen your neural pathways. Your neural pathways are basically like highways that run through your brain that go from the information stored to your mouth. And the more you can work these neural pathways, the more fine-tuned that highway is going to be. The easier it's going to be to drive on that highway. When you first start doing this, it's like there's a lot of construction on the highway and there's a lot of traffic and you're getting stuck a lot and your brain's like, sure, it's in there, but it's not coming. And this practice allows you to clear the traffic, to clear the construction, and it takes repetition to do this. And so the more you practice the retrieval practice, the easier it becomes, the more fine-tuned those highways become, and the lower your forgetfulness curve becomes. And so it gets to the point where it was all the way really quick forgetfulness curve, then it gets a little less, and then a little less, and it starts to flatten out. And you're able to remember a lot more things a lot more often. Next is association. So this is something I've started talking about with my clients a lot more regularly, is especially for high level exams like the MW and the MS, potentially for the advanced as well, is that it's really important to make sure that you are putting information into your brain in a way that is associative. And so we are thinking about how things work in conjunction with each other, coming up to a bird's eye level view and saying, okay, Chardonnay is made all over the world. Let's come up to a bird's eye level view and think about Chardonnay in all these places and why they're different in each of these places. You come up to a bird's eye view, you can even think about this in terms of diagrams or spreadsheets. I am very much a spreadsheet person. And if you've gone onto the site, you've seen that there's a lot of different spreadsheets, either throughout the study guides or throughout the resources just in general. And it's because that's how my brain works best, as I really like seeing everything side by side. And so here's one example. These are all of the residual sugar requirements for Bordeaux as a whole. I need to see them all side by side so I can understand why things taste differently in each of these places. So I can be able to memorize these better for when I sit for an exam, or just so I can understand. And this is just a small view. The next view of this is now I make a residual spreadsheet for the entire world. And I can see for the entire world where there is a grams per liter requirement of residual sugar for any of the wine regions, I can see them side by side. And so when you hear that Pedro Jimenez and Sherry has a minimum residual sugar, I think it's like 400 grams per liter, you see how much more insanely sweet that is than Sauterne. You think about Muscat de Cap course, and their grams per liter is 110 or 100. Don't just quote me off of this. This is all just coming off the top of my head. And you're like, oh, wow, you think about Sauterne being so sweet. Well, that's double the amount of Sauterne. And being able to have a spreadsheet where these are all side by side, it makes it much, much easier for your brain to associate these and bring them out better, because it now has a way to bounce them off of each other. The more you can tack things onto each other, the stickier it becomes, and the easier it is for your brain to bring it out, because it's a lot more information to come out at once, rather than this small little minute thing that you're just like trying to find somewhere in your brain. Here's another way that I like to do association is I add color to it. This is the must-wait requirements for Bordeaux as well. I just pulled my Bordeaux one out. You can use this for anything. And I like to have color associations with this as well. So Bordeaux Blanc, Bordeaux Superior is Blanc only, Bordeaux Superior for Merlot. It's red. It helps me see, like, green always means white wine in my brain. Red always means red wine in my brain. And then I've got purple for sweet wines. I've got pink for sparkling wines. Things along those lines is how my brain sees things. And so the more you're able to put things into the way your brain sees it, to have some sort of visual, if you are a visual learner, some sort of visual cue for your brain, the easier it is when you sit for an exam. You can sit and close your eyes. You can bring that visual up. and be like, oh yeah, it was green, it's this. Oh, it was pink, it was that. And this is why maps, in my opinion, are incredibly important as well. So into visualization more specifically, visualization looks different for every single person. For some people, it looks like this, which is in my brain, a crazy ass mind map that my brain's like, no, no. Where some people are like, ooh, this is awesome. This is great. This is exactly how my brain works. Mind mapping is not something my brain likes to do, but it works for so many people. And obviously, this is a picture that you can purchase a poster on Amazon. This is something people can purchase. And so because of that, this is obviously very well suited for a lot of people's brains. Doesn't mean it's suited for yours, not necessarily, but it could be. Next is some sort of diagram. So this is a diagram of winemaking for, I don't know, something I just pulled it off of Google. And this way you're able to associate how things are working with a diagram. You can associate how things are working with a map. If you paid attention to the map resources on my website, you'll see on the regional maps, I actually uploaded my hand-drawn maps. I mean, all of them are my hand-drawn maps, but my color-coded ones that I was using while I was studying, and you can see how my brain works. I have different colors in different places for different things. I've got all the details that I need to know about that specific place on that map, because the easier it is for my brain to understand it, if I have it all on one piece of paper. And so all the most important information I would have on the map and color code it in a way that made sense for how my brain needed to understand it. So visualization looks different for a lot of people. It can be mind maps, it can be diagrams, it can be spreadsheets, it can be charts, it can be pie graphs, it can be bar graphs, it can be a million different things, whatever works best for your brain. But this is the fourth step. So first, we have spaced repetition. Second, we have retrieval practices. Third, we have association. Fourth, we have visualization. Now we're going to go into summarization. It is really important that when you are studying things, you summarize it in your own words, in your own brain's way of thinking. And I like to do this again. We talked about that recall page. Your recall page is basically you summarizing everything you just learned. You're putting it into your own words so you can explain it to others, so your brain can remember it in the way that your brain works. Because we can sit and hear things, and the best English spoken in the best cadence, and it might not stick in our brain. But if we write it down in our own words, use mnemonics, use abbreviations, use things that trigger your brain to work. We talked about this, I don't know, a couple sessions ago, about how mnemonics were very helpful for me. And the way I do mnemonics are always in some sort of like dirty, funny, scandalous type of association of words, because that's how my brain remembers things. Does that mean your brain remembers it that way? No, but I can summarize it better when I can associate it in my brain. So you're going to notice as I'm saying these things, these are all stacking on top of each other. The more we associate things, the easier it is to visualize them, the more we can retrieve them, so on and so forth. So summarization, having a daily summary, a daily recall is really, really helpful for your brain. And make sure when you do those daily recalls, you have them all in one place so you can go back and read them or skim through them before you start the previous sessions. This also helps you review when you go all the way back to week 1 for review. It helps you review feel not so daunting because you can just go through your recalls and that is your review. Number 6 is teaching others. So I know some of you already teach others and some of you are working on practices to teach others, but teaching others has so many benefits. One, it makes you be extra prepared because you're standing or sitting in front of a lot of people and talking about what it is that your topic is about. Second is a lot of people get nervous that they're not going to be able to answer the questions for the students. So they start to work even harder to make sure that they understand the information even more. And third, and my favorite part of teaching others, is when you don't know the answers to the questions that you're asked, because it highlights the gaps in your knowledge. Those gaps in your knowledge are really important. And as a teacher, it can feel scary, or you can feel like a little bit of imposter syndrome because you're like, ooh, I don't know the answer to that. But that's the best thing that can happen, because you're going to walk into that exam, you're going to do a service practical, you're going to be doing anything sitting in front of a client or a customer, and they're going to ask you a question, and there's at some point you're not going to know the answer to that, and that's totally okay. It shows you where your gap in your knowledge is. It allows you to fine tune that knowledge. You can do this in a multitude of different ways. If you have a staff or customers, you can do classes for them. You can do pre-shift classes. You can do classes people can sign up for. You can do wine dinners. You can do this in your study groups. You can teach others in your own study groups. Or you can do our education exchange. Because you are a member who is on this call right now, you have access to our education exchange, which is just a process where you fill out a form and say, I want to teach about X, Y, and Z. You fill out the details in the form. I say, that sounds great. You create the whole entire class. We will promote it on our website. You will teach it for free. People will attend it for free. And that allows, one, everybody to learn a little bit from you and get another way of education into their system. And it allows you to be able to teach others for a whole different way of allowing things to enter your brain to make it easier for you to retain them. Next and last is questioning. So questioning comes in the form of questions. You can write questions on flashcards. You can type questions into flashcard apps like Anki or Brainscape or Quizlet or whichever one works best for your brain. They're all pretty similar, but have a little bit of different unique twists to them. Or you can do practice tests. I highly recommend, if you have not written a practice test, to write practice tests. It makes you think about what is most important to ask. And it makes you dive into the most crucial aspects of each of the places that you are writing the test for. And then if you can take practice tests as well, these can be done in your study groups. These can be done with mentors. They can be done with a coach like me. It can be anyone who can give you these practice tests. Practice tests help reinforce your learning. And again, it makes you aware of where your knowledge gaps are. When you don't know the answer to a quiz, to a test, to a question, you're able to say, okay, I need to go look that up. I need to write that down and go check that later. If you're doing the practice test with someone, you're able to receive feedback and constructive criticism to better your performance. And this also improves your endurance and your mental fortitude. Taking these exams is exhausting to the brain. It is a lot of information that you're having to pull out at once. You finish these exams and you're just excruciatingly tired, especially when you think about verbal exams like the MS, for instance, where you're sitting there for an hour and just answering questions that are rapidly fired at you. These help you develop your stamina, your endurance, and your mental fortitude for these exams, especially when you have a few questions back to back where you're like, whoo, I don't know what that answer is. It allows you to be able to say, okay, I'm going to put those aside. It's okay, I don't know what the answer is. That's not going to affect my performance for the rest of the exam. And it allows you to have fortitude over the times when you're just like, oh, I can't remember that, or oh, I don't know what it is, and allows you to keep progressing forward.